The strange message came through Jack Holloway's headphones at exactly 3:17 in the morning, Earth Standard Time. He had been half asleep at his station in Outpost Horizon's communications center, fighting to stay awake during the graveyard shift. The message wasn't loud or even clear, just a faint pattern of sounds unlike anything in human records. Jack sat up straight and adjusted his equipment. The signal was coming from deep space, far beyond the 12 colony worlds that humans had settled since achieving faster-than-light travel 30 years ago. He ran it through the standard translation programs, but nothing matched. After triple-checking that this wasn't some kind of equipment malfunction, he called his supervisor. "You better not be waking me for another false alarm," grumbled Chief Communications Officer Liam Murphy as he shuffled into the room 20 minutes later, still pulling on his uniform jacket. "It's not like the mining drone signals or that echo feedback from last month," Jack said, playing the recording again. "Listen to the pattern. It's structured, sir. This is a message from someone." Murphy listened, his frown slowly changing to a look of concern. "Get Dr. Pierce up here. If anyone can make sense of this, she can." Dr. Olivia Pierce was the outpost's top linguist. She had helped establish communication with the Rigelians, the only alien species humans had peaceful contact with so far. She arrived quickly, her curly hair still flattened on one side from sleep. "What have you found?" she asked, immediately focused despite the early hour. For the next 3 weeks, Jack and Dr. Pierce worked almost non-stop on the message. Other signals began coming in on the same frequency, giving them more samples to work with. Slowly, using both computer analysis and Dr. Pierce's intuition, they began to understand. "It's a warning," Dr. Pierce said finally, her voice tight with worry. "From a species calling themselves the Eldarans. They're telling anyone who can hear that something is coming. Something that destroys worlds." Jack felt cold despite the warmth of the communications center. "Are they sure? Maybe we've mistranslated." "No." Dr. Pierce cut him off. "The later messages include mathematical proofs and star charts. The translation is correct. They call this threat the Void Eaters, and according to these coordinates, they're headed toward human space." The news traveled quickly up the chain of command. Within days, Admiral Sam Westfield himself arrived at Outpost Horizon to hear the message firsthand. The Admiral was a tall man with gray at his temples and eyes that had seen humanity's struggles to establish itself among the stars. "Play it again," he ordered, standing with his hands clasped behind his back. Jack started the most recent message, now partially translated into English by their computers. "Flee while you can. The Void Eaters cannot be stopped. They have consumed thousands of worlds. Our weapons do nothing. They will reach your sector in less than one of your Earth years. Evacuation is your only hope." Admiral Westfield's expression remained neutral, but his knuckles whitened. "And we're sure this is legitimate?" "The star charts match known systems that have gone silent in the past decade," Dr. Pierce explained. "Systems we thought were just uninhabited or experiencing communication problems." Before the Admiral could respond, alarms blared throughout the outpost. Jack's console lit up with alerts. "Unidentified ships dropping out of FTL near Saturn, sir," he reported. 6 of them. Configuration unknown. They're not responding to hails. For a moment, Jack thought the Void Eaters had arrived early. But these ships made no aggressive moves. Instead, they sent a message on all frequencies in multiple languages, including perfect English. "Attention humans of Earth and colonies. We are representatives of the Galactic Confederation. We come with urgent information and an offer of assistance." No one on Outpost Horizon slept that night. The 6 ships belonged to 6 different alien species, none of which humans had encountered before. They requested an immediate meeting with Earth's leaders, citing an emergency that threatened all intelligent life in this sector of the galaxy. 3 days later, Jack found himself in a meeting room on Luna Base, Earth's moon. As the one who had first intercepted the warning message, he had been asked to attend. Dr. Pierce sat beside him, while Admiral Westfield represented Earth's defense forces. President Eliza Winters led the human delegation, her face showing the strain of sleepless nights. Across from them sat the alien representatives, Ambassador Krell of the Motorans, a tall being with 4 arms and skin like polished copper, spoke first. The message you received is correct. The Void Eaters are real, and they are coming. They are not a species as you understand it, but a form of life that consumes all matter and energy in its path. They have destroyed thousands of worlds over millennia. If they're so dangerous, why haven't we heard of them before? Asked President Winters. Because they move slowly across the galaxy, and most species have time to evacuate, answered a small bird-like being named Trill. The Confederation tracks their movements and warns planets in their path. Can they be stopped? Admiral Westfield asked. Can they be fought? The aliens exchanged glances that even humans could read as uncomfortable. We have fought them for centuries, said Ambassador Krell. All our weapons, all our technology, nothing stops them. They adapt to every attack. They learn from every encounter. The Confederation's unanimous recommendation is immediate evacuation of all human worlds. A heavy silence fell over the room. You're running away, Admiral Westfield said finally, his voice low. All of you. We are surviving, corrected Trill, as we have for generations, as we recommend you do as well. The Confederation has ships ready to help transport your people to safe sectors, added Ambassador Krell, but you must decide quickly. The Void Eaters will reach your outer colonies within 6 months and Earth itself within a year. President Winters leaned forward. And if we choose to stay and fight? Again, the uncomfortable glances between the aliens. Then you will die, said Ambassador Krell simply. Every species that has stood against the Void Eaters has been consumed. That is why we formed the Confederation, to warn others and help them escape. We should at least try, Jack found himself saying, surprising everyone including himself. We can't just abandon our homes without a fight. Dr. Pierce nodded in agreement, but the alien seemed genuinely confused by this reaction. We respect your courage, said Trill. But this is not about courage, it is about survival. The choice seems clear to us. The meeting ended with President Winters promising to bring the matter before the full Earth government and colonial representatives. As they left the room, Jack caught Admiral Westfield's eye. What do you think they'll decide, sir? He asked. The Admiral looked out the window at the blue-green sphere of Earth hanging in the blackness of space. I don't know, Holloway, he said quietly. But I know what I'm going to recommend. He turned to face Jack, his expression resolute. Humanity didn't come this far just to run at the first real challenge we face. If these Void Eaters want our worlds, they're going to have to fight for every inch. 3 months passed since the meeting with the Galactic Confederation. Earth and its colonies had made their choice, and the news had spread across human space. They would not run. They would stay and fight. The announcement came after 2 weeks of heated debate among world leaders. In the end, the vote wasn't even close. 87% of Earth's nations chose to stand their ground. The colonies voted similarly, though with slightly more dissent. Every human was given a choice: stay and fight, or leave on the Confederation transport ships. Most chose to stay. Gloria Martinez wiped sweat from her forehead as she looked at the massive construction project around her. Earth's orbital shipyards, once used to build colony vessels and cargo ships, now worked day and night to produce weapons platforms. As chief engineer of the Luna Defense Grid, she had been given an impossible task: turn Earth's moon into a fortress. Chief, Martinez, we have a problem with the Eastern Quadrant shield generators, called her assistant Ben. They're pulling too much power from the main grid, Gloria sighed. Reroute through the backup system, we can't afford delays. All around her, workers moved with urgent purpose. Some were military personnel, but most were civilians, ordinary people who had chosen to use their skills to defend their home. The Confederation representatives had been shocked by humanity's decision. They'd expected humans to behave rationally and evacuate. They didn't understand that humans had a different definition of rational. Meanwhile, on Earth's surface, Colonel Alan Dawson watched as his new recruits ran the obstacle course. The Luna Military Academy had tripled in size since the announcement. Young men and women from all over Earth and the colonies had volunteered for service. Some had never even held a weapon before. Move faster, he shouted as a group struggled with the wall climb. The Void Eaters won't wait for you to catch your breath. He pushed them hard, but there was no cruelty in it. Only desperation. Alan had seen what the Void Eaters could do. His brother Paul had been on the scout ship that encountered a Void Eater advance unit near Neptune. There had been no survivors. "Sir," said his second-in-command, Lieutenant Samantha Wells. "The new weapons from Dr. Wright's lab have arrived. The troops need to start training with them immediately." Alan nodded. "Get the squad leaders together. We'll run through the basics, then implement full combat simulations by tomorrow." In his laboratory beneath the Rocky Mountains, Dr. Peter Wright carefully examined the test results on his screen. The debris from the scout ship encounter had yielded valuable information. The Void Eaters weren't just machines, as some had first thought. They were biomechanical, part living organism, part technology. "Run the test again," he told his assistant. "I want to be absolutely certain." When the results came back identical, Peter allowed himself a small smile. The Void Eaters had a weakness. Their biological components were sensitive to certain frequencies of radiation. Not enough to kill them outright, but enough to disrupt their functions. It was a start. He picked up the secure phone and dialed Admiral Westfield's direct line. "I've got something, sir. Not a solution yet, but a direction." On Mars Colony, Governor Kelly Reeves faced an angry crowd outside the administration building. Food rationing had begun last week, and people were unhappy. Resources were being diverted to the war effort, and civilians were feeling the pinch. "I understand your concerns," she said, standing firm despite the shouting. "But every gram of steel, every kilowatt of power, and yes, every extra portion of food that goes to our defenders means a better chance of survival for all of us." A man pushed to the front of the crowd. "My kids are hungry. How am I supposed to tell them they can't eat because some soldier needs extra rations?" Kelly took a deep breath. "Sir, if we lose this fight, your children won't be hungry. They'll be gone. Everything will be gone. I'm not asking you to starve. I'm asking you to sacrifice a little comfort now so we all have a future." The crowd didn't cheer her words, but the angry shouts died down. Reality was setting in. This wasn't a political issue or an economic one. It was survival. Back on Earth, President Winters addressed the United Nations General Assembly. The chamber was packed with representatives from every nation and colony. "The first Confederation evacuation ships will depart next week," she announced. "Anyone who wishes to leave may do so with no judgment. We understand that everyone must make their own choice." She paused, looking around the room. "For those who stay, know this. We face an enemy unlike any humanity has encountered before. The odds are against us. But throughout our history, humans have faced impossible odds and prevailed. We did not come this far to surrender our home without a fight." Her words were met with solemn nods. The initial wave of patriotic fervor had passed, replaced by grim determination. Reports from the outer system told of strange disturbances near Pluto's orbit. The Void Eaters were coming, ahead of schedule. At Outpost Horizon, Jack Holloway and Dr. Pierce continued their work. More messages had arrived from the Eldarans and other fleeing species. Some contained information about Void Eater tactics. Others offered technical data that might help in the fight. "Look at this," Dr. Pierce said, pointing to a section of translated. "The Eldarans say the Void Eaters aren't just destroying planets, they're consuming them, breaking them down into raw materials to make more of themselves." Jack frowned. "So they're not just killers, they're builders? Creators of some kind?" "More like replicators," Dr. Pierce replied. "And that might give us an edge. If we can disrupt their consumption process, we might be able to slow them down." The alarm sounded before Jack could reply. Red lights flashed throughout the outpost. He rushed to his console, heart pounding. "Massive energy signature detected at the edge of the solar system," announced the automated alert system. "Multiple objects entering from deep space." Jack looked at the sensor readings and felt his blood run cold. It wasn't a fleet or an armada. It was a swarm. Thousands upon thousands of objects, ranging from small drone-sized units to massive ships larger than anything humans had ever built. "They're here," he whispered. All across the solar system, the alert went out. On Earth, in orbit, on Mars, and the other colonies, humans prepared for the fight of their lives. The Void Eaters had arrived, and now humanity's choice would be put to the ultimate test. Admiral Westfield stood on the bridge of the flagship Liberty, watching as the tactical display showed the enemy's approach. Behind him, the combined fleets of Earth and her colonies, nearly 500 ships, waited in formation. All ships battle stations, he ordered calmly. This is what we've prepared for. Let's show these Void Eaters what happens when they threaten humanity's home. Lieutenant Nathan Hayes gripped the controls of his stealth fighter as it drifted silently near Neptune's orbit. His small vessel was nearly invisible against the blackness of space, its heat signature masked and communication silent. All around him, the Void Eater swarm moved like a living cloud, their strange ships pulsing with blue-green light. My God, he whispered to himself, watching as several larger Void Eater vessels surrounded Triton, Neptune's largest moon. His orders were to observe and report back, not to engage. The 6 pilots in his reconnaissance squadron had spread out across the outer solar system to gather intelligence on the enemy. Through his view screen, Nathan watched in horror as the Void Eaters began to dismantle Triton. It wasn't an explosion or an attack. It was more like digestion. The moon's surface rippled and then began to break apart, the pieces flowing toward the alien ships. Within hours, a quarter of Triton had simply disappeared. Nathan activated his ship's recording systems, capturing everything. The Confederation had warned them about this, but seeing it happen was different. The Void Eaters weren't just destroying, they were consuming, using the raw materials to grow their fleet. A proximity alarm flashed. One of the smaller Void Eater ships had changed course and was heading directly toward him. Nathan's heart raced. Had they detected him somehow? He couldn't outgun even one of them, and his only advantage was stealth. He powered down every non-essential system and held his breath, as if the enemy might hear him. The Void Eater vessel passed within 2 kilometers of his position, close, enough for him to see the organic-looking bulges and tendrils that covered its metallic surface. Then it moved on, continuing its patrol. Nathan exhaled slowly. He had to get this information back to the fleet. He waited until the nearest Void Eaters were occupied with Triton, then carefully began his retreat. As his engines powered up, he sent a brief encrypted burst transmission to the other recon pilots. Mission complete. Rendezvous at Fallback Point Alpha. 3 days later, the main battle began in the asteroid belt. Admiral Westfield had chosen this location carefully. The scattered asteroids would limit the Void Eaters' ability to swarm, and the mineral-rich rocks might distract their consumption instincts. The Liberty led the human fleet forward. Besides the flagship, Earth had committed 7 heavy carriers, 24 destroyers, and over 200 smaller combat vessels. It was the largest fleet humanity had ever assembled, crewed by their best and brightest. Yet as they approached the enemy, the scale of what they faced became clear. For every human ship, there were at least 30 Void Eater vessels. All ships, engage at will, Admiral Westfield ordered. Target the larger ships first, remember your training. The human fleet opened fire. Missiles streaked across space, followed by energy beams and railgun projectiles. The weapons Dr. Wright had helped develop, the radiation emitters, fired concentrated bursts at the enemy. The effect was immediate. Several smaller Void Eater ships shuddered and went dark when hit by the radiation. Some of the larger vessels showed signs of damage, their movements becoming erratic. "It's working," shouted Captain Diane Russell, Westfield's second-in-command. But the Admiral's expression remained grim. "For now," he said. "Watch." The damaged Void Eater ships began to change. Their surfaces rippled and reshaped. When the next radiation burst hit them, they had much less effect. The Void Eaters were adapting. "They learn fast," Westfield noted. "Signal the fleet to modify radiation frequencies according to pattern. Beta. Let's see if we can stay ahead of their adaptations." The battle raged for hours. Human ships darted between asteroids, firing and retreating. The Void Eaters moved with strange precision, sometimes acting as individuals, sometimes as a coordinated mass. They didn't seem to care about their losses, sacrificing smaller ships to protect the larger ones. The mining station on Ceres, the largest asteroid, became a focal point. Its defensive guns blazed as Void Eater ships surrounded it. The station's commander, Major Frank Delaney, directed the defense from the control center. "They're cutting through the outer hull in Section 4, reported one of his officers. "Security teams are responding, but..." The report was cut off by a loud screeching sound that came through the station's communication system. The lights flickered, and the main screen showed Void Eater boarding parties inside the station. They weren't soldiers in the human sense, but swarms of small, insect-like machines that flowed through the corridors. "Evacuate all personnel," Major Delaney ordered. "Emergency protocol, Charlie. Get everyone to the escape shuttles." He knew the station was lost. His priority now was saving his people. As the battle for Ceres continued, the main fleet struggled against the endless Void Eater ships. For every enemy vessel they destroyed, 2 more seemed to take its place. The radiation weapons were becoming less effective as the Void Eaters continued to adapt. "Admiral," Captain Russell said, looking at the tactical display, "I recommend a strategic withdrawal to Mars orbit. We can't hold this position much longer." Admiral Westfield nodded reluctantly. "Send the order. All ships to fall back in stages. Destroyers provide covering fire for the carriers." As the fleet began its organized retreat, the Void Eaters launched a new attack. From their largest ships came strange torpedo-like objects that moved faster than anything the humans had seen before. The human fleet's point defense systems fired desperately, but many of the torpedoes got through. When they hit, they didn't explode. Instead, they attached to the hulls of human ships and began to burrow inside, like parasites. The affected ships started to lose power and control as the Void Eater devices spread through their systems. The Liberty was hit by 3 of them. Emergency bulkheads slammed shut throughout the ship as sections were compromised. Admiral Westfield stood calmly on the bridge as alarms blared around him. "Seal off decks 7 through 12, he ordered. "Deploy security teams with radiation weapons." A massive explosion rocked the ship. The engineering section had been breached, and the main power core was fluctuating dangerously. Westfield was thrown across the bridge, slamming into a control panel. Blood trickled from a gash on his forehead. Captain Russell helped him up. "Sir, you're injured. We need to get you to medical." "I'm fine," he insisted, but his legs gave way as he tried to stand. "The fleet..." "I'll take command," Russell assured. His medics arrived on the bridge. "We'll get through this." As Westfield was carried to the medical bay, Russell took his place at the command station. The situation was dire. 30% of the human fleet had been disabled or destroyed. The Void Eaters were pushing forward, consuming asteroids and damaged ships alike. On Earth, billions of people watched the battle through live feeds. In Chicago, schoolteacher Lisa Cooper gathered her neighbors in the community center. Instead of panicking, they organized. Former military personnel began training civilians. Medical supplies were collected. Underground shelters were prepared. "We need to be ready if they reach Earth," Lisa told the gathered crowd. "This isn't just the military's fight. It's everyone's fight, all across the planet." Similar scenes played out. Humanity was preparing for the worst while hoping for the best. The battle in space wasn't going well, but they weren't giving up. Not a single evacuation ship had departed in the last week, despite the Confederation's continued offers. If Earth was going to fall, its people would fall defending it. Dr. Peter Wright hadn't slept in 3 days. His eyes burned as he stared at the test results on his computer screen. Around him, his team of scientists worked frantically in the underground laboratory. The first battle had proven that his radiation weapons could hurt the Void Eaters, but the effect didn't last. They adapted too quickly. "We need to try something different," he muttered, rubbing his eyes. "They learn and change to resist one frequency, so we need multiple frequencies hitting them at once." His assistant, Dr. Helen Ward, looked up from her own work. "Like a chord instead of a single note?" Peter nodded. "Exactly. If we can hit them with several precisely calibrated pulses from different emitters at the same time, it might create a cascading effect in their biological components. He began sketching a new design on his tablet. It would require coordination between multiple ships or defense platforms, all firing at exactly the same moment. The timing would need to be perfect. Far from Earth, on the mining colony of Vesta, a discovery was made that gave humanity another small advantage. Foreman Greg Miller had been leading a team tunneling into a new section of the asteroid when their equipment began to malfunction. "Something's interfering with the sensors," reported one of his miners, tapping the screen of her handheld device. Greg frowned. "What's causing it?" They analyzed the mineral composition of that section of the asteroid and found an unusual combination of elements that seemed to create a natural dampening field. It disrupted certain types of electronic signals, including, they realized with excitement, the communication frequencies used by the Void Eaters. Greg immediately reported the discovery to Earth Defense Command. Within hours, mining operations across the asteroid belt were searching for similar mineral deposits. If they could use this material to create stealth technology or jamming devices, it might give human ships a fighting chance. Meanwhile, Captain Diane Russell had taken command of the remaining fleet in orbit around Mars. With Admiral Westfield still recovering from his injuries, she had to prepare for the next phase of the battle. The Void Eaters had slowed their advance after the asteroid belt, seemingly focused on consuming the resources there before pushing inward. This gave humanity precious time, but not much of it. "We can't win by fighting them directly," Russell told her ship captains during a strategy meeting. "We need to be smarter. Lieutenant Hayes, share what you discovered during your recon mission." Nathan Hayes stood up, looking more confident than he felt. The young pilot's successful reconnaissance had earned him a quick promotion. "The Void Eaters follow predictable patterns when they're not actively engaged in combat," he explained, showing sensor data on the main screen. "Their larger ships always stay at the center of any group, protected by the smaller ones. And there's a delay, just a few seconds, between when they detect a threat and when they respond. So we hit them fast and retreat before they can adapt," said Captain Luis Ortiz of the destroyer Defiant. "Exactly," Russell confirmed. "Guerrilla tactics. We use our smaller, faster ships to strike at their supply lines and outlying groups. We don't try to win space battles. We just hurt them enough to slow their advance." The new strategy was implemented immediately. Small strike forces of 3 to 5 ships would jump into a Void Eater group's perimeter, fire everything they had at a specific target, then jump out before the enemy could fully respond. Sometimes they succeeded, destroying or damaging Void Eater ships. Sometimes they didn't make it back. Lieutenant Hayes developed new flight patterns that took advantage of the few seconds of delay he had observed. His pilots practiced maneuvers that no human would expect, hoping the Void Eaters' predictive targeting systems would be similarly confused. On Earth, Dr. Olivia Pierce made an important discovery. She had been reviewing the original warning messages from the Eldrins and found references to something called the Network. "I think it's some kind of defensive system," she explained to President Winters during an emergency briefing. "Built by a race the Eldarans called the Precursors, who fought the Void Eaters thousands of years ago." "Where is this network?" the President asked. "That's the problem. The references are vague, but there are coordinates pointing to a star system about 12 light years from Earth. If there's technology there that helped the Precursors fight the Void Eaters, we need to find it." Despite the risk, an expedition was quickly organized. The research vessel Discovery, one of Earth's fastest ships, was chosen for the mission. With a small military escort, it slipped past the Void Eater forces and jumped to light speed, heading for the distant star system. Back on Luna, Chief Engineer Gloria Martinez worked with a team that was studying captured Void Eater technology. The parasite-like devices that had disabled so many human ships during the first battle had been analyzed, and Martinez had an idea. "Their tech is partly biological," she explained to her team. "It responds to stimuli. So what if we created a shield that doesn't just block their energy weapons, but actively resonates at a frequency that disrupts their biological components. Her team built a prototype using principles similar to Dr. Wright's radiation weapons, but applied to defensive systems. Initial tests were promising. The shield could withstand a Void Eater energy beam for several minutes before failing, but the power requirements were enormous, more than Earth's current infrastructure could provide. As scientists and engineers worked desperately to find advantages, the Void Eaters finished consuming the resources of the asteroid belt and resumed their advance toward Mars. The red planet's defenses were as strong as humanity could make them, with orbital platforms, ground-based weapons, and the remaining fleet positioned strategically, but it wasn't enough. The battle for Mars lasted just 27 hours. The Void Eaters came in overwhelming numbers, having grown their fleet using the materials harvested from the asteroid belt. They seemed to have learned from the first battle, using new tactics that countered humanity's guerrilla strategy. The human forces fought bravely. Every ship, every weapon, every soldier gave everything they had. But in the end, the outcome was inevitable. Mars fell. The colony's 2 million inhabitants had been evacuated to Earth in the weeks prior, but the planet itself was now an enemy. Earth stood as humanity's last major stronghold. The situation seemed hopeless until a transmission came from the Discovery, now returning from its expedition to the precursor system. "We found it," reported Captain Alex Rivera, his voice crackling with excitement despite the poor connection. "The network is real. It's a massive defensive installation built into an entire moon. We've activated it and are bringing back key components." The news spread quickly, giving new hope to Earth's defenders. If the precursors had created weapons that could fight the Void Eaters effectively, perhaps humanity still had a chance. As the Discovery made its final approach to Earth, the Void Eaters began their assault on Luna. Earth's moon, transformed into a fortress under Gloria Martinez's direction, was humanity's outer defense line. If it fell, Earth would be directly exposed. Martinez stood in the control center of the Luna defense grid, watching as the first wave of Void Eater ships appeared on the sensors. Behind her, thousands of men and women prepared for the fight of their lives. "All defense platforms online," she ordered calmly. "Let's show these things what happens when they threaten our home." The people of Earth could see it happening. The Void Eaters had reached the moon, and the battle was visible from the planet's surface. At night, flashes of light burst across the lunar landscape as defense platforms fired and Void Eater ships exploded. During the day, powerful telescopes showed the horrible truth. The moon was being consumed bit by bit. Luna held out for 4 days. Chief Engineer Gloria Martinez and her team fought until the end, but there were simply too many enemies. As the last defense sections fell, evacuation ships rushed to get as many people off as possible. Martinez was on the final transport, watching through a viewport as the fortress she had built was torn apart behind her. On Earth, the news of Luna's fall was met not with panic, but with grim determination. This was it, the final stand. President Winters addressed the world from her underground command center. "Today we face our greatest test," she said, her face tired but resolute. "The enemy is at our doorstep. But we have something they don't. Expect a plan." The plan had come from an unlikely combination of discoveries. Dr. Wright's multi-frequency radiation weapon, the mineral found by Greg Miller's mining team, Captain Rivera's precursor technology, and Gloria Martinez's shield design. Together they offered a slim chance, the only chance of stopping the Void Eaters. "Every major power station on Earth has been connected to the global grid," explained Martinez during the final briefing. "When activated, they'll channel their entire output into the planetary shield network, which will be modified with the precursor resonance technology," continued Dr. Wright, "creating not just a defensive barrier but a weapon tuned specifically to the Void Eater's biological frequency." Admiral Westfield, now recovered from his injuries, studied the plans. "And the fleet's role?" Captain Russell pointed to the tactical display. "The remaining ships will position themselves in this formation around Earth. Each ship will be equipped with modified radiation emitters that will amplify the main pulse when it comes. We don't try to win the space battle, We just create the perfect conditions for the pulse to work. It was a desperate plan. The entire planet's power output would be channeled into one massive strike. If it failed, Earth would be defenseless. 2 days later, the Void Eater Armada arrived in Earth orbit. Their ships darkened the sky, visible even in daylight as moving shadows across the sun. People looked up and knew this was the moment that would decide humanity's fate. The remains of Earth's fleet, now just under 100 ships, moved into position. Admiral Westfield commanded from the Liberty, which had been hastily repaired. Captain Russell led the second battle group from the destroyer Valiant. "Remember, we're not trying to win this fight," Westfield reminded his captains. "We just need to hold our formation until the pulse is ready." The Void Eaters attacked immediately. Their ships swarmed toward Earth, firing energy weapons that lit up the atmosphere. The human fleet responded, carefully maintaining their specific positions while fighting off the enemy. On the ground, civilian defense units protected key power distribution nodes. In Chicago, Lisa Cooper led her neighborhood team as they fended off small Void Eater landing craft. The invaders had sent down thousands of their insect-like machines trying to disrupt the power grid before the pulse could be activated. Colonel Alan Dawson and his troops fought street by street in several major cities. The training he had given his recruits was paying off. They moved with precision, using the modified radiation weapons to good effect against the ground forces. "Hold the line," Dawson shouted as his unit defended a power station in New York. "Every minute we give the scientists is another chance for all of us." In the command center, Dr. Wright worked frantically with his team. The power levels were rising across the global grid, but so was the strain on the system. Transformers were overloading, lines were burning out. They were pushing Earth's infrastructure beyond its limits. "We need 5 more minutes," Wright told President Winters. "Just 5 more minutes." In space, the battle was going badly. Human ships were being destroyed one by one. The Liberty took heavy damage, its engines disabled and life support failing. On several decks, Admiral Westfield stood calmly on the bridge, giving orders as fires burned around him. "All ships maintain formation at all costs," he commanded. "This is what we've trained for." The Void Eater ships pressed closer to Earth. Some had broken through the fleet's line and were entering the atmosphere. People looked up to see alien vessels descending on major cities. In the command center, Dr. Wright's team made the final adjustments. "We're ready," he announced. President Winters looked at the reports coming in from around the world. Hundreds of millions dead, cities in ruins. But still, humanity fought on. "Activate the pulse," she ordered. Dr. Wright pressed the command. Across the planet, every power station, every generator, every energy source fed into the grid. Lights dimmed worldwide as power was diverted. For a moment it seemed like nothing was happening. Then it began. A wave of energy surged through the carefully positioned human fleet. Each ship's modified emitters amplified it, creating a complex web of radiation that engulfed the Void Eater Armada. The pulse was invisible to human eyes, but its effects were not. Void Eater ships began to shudder. Their organic components reacted violently to the precisely tuned radiation. Smaller vessels simply fell apart, their binding structures dissolving. Larger ships convulsed, their systems failing as the biological parts died. On the ground, the insect-like machine stopped in mid-motion, then collapsed into piles of inert material. The pulse lasted only 42 seconds. When it ended, Earth's power grid was in ruins. Blackouts covered the planet, but the Void Eaters had been devastated. Their remaining ships drifted aimlessly, dead or dying. Admiral Westfield watched from the bridge of the Liberty as the enemy fleet disintegrated around him. "Send out recovery teams," he ordered. "I want to make sure they're really finished." In the weeks that followed, humanity began to rebuild. The cost had been enormous. Billions dead, cities destroyed, infrastructure in ruins. But Earth had survived. The few Void Eater ships that had escaped the pulse had fled the solar system, apparently unwilling to face humanity's strange new weapon. Then, 6 weeks after the battle, something unexpected happened. Ships appeared at the edge of the solar system, Not Void Eaters, but vessels from the Galactic Confederation. They approached cautiously, sending messages of both congratulation and disbelief. "We did not think it was possible," Ambassador Krell admitted during a meeting with Earth's leaders. "No species has ever successfully repelled the Void Eaters. The Confederation wishes to offer aid in your reconstruction efforts." President Winters accepted the help, but her expression remained cool. "We would have appreciated this aid during the battle." "We understand your anger," Krell replied. "But you must understand, no one has ever succeeded before. Everyone else fled because it was the only way to survive. Only humans chose to stay and fight, and only humans won." 1 year later, Earth held a memorial ceremony for all who had died defending humanity. Admiral Westfield, now head of Earth's new defense force, gave a speech honoring their sacrifice. "They gave everything so that we might live," he said to the gathered crowd. "And in doing so, they changed the galaxy forever." It was true. Reports from Confederation ships indicated that other Void Eater swarms had changed course, now avoiding human-controlled space. For the first time in recorded history, the cosmic predators had learned to fear their prey. Jack Holloway, who had intercepted the first warning so long ago, stood on a hillside overlooking a rebuilt city. Next to him, Dr. Olivia Pierce watched the sunset. "Do you think they'll come back?" she asked. Jack shook his head. "Maybe someday, but they'll find us ready. And they'll find us together." In the sky above, the stars were coming out. Among them were the lights of ships, human vessels, now ranging farther into space than ever before. Earth was reaching out to the stars with new confidence. Everyone else had fled. Only humans had chosen to stay and fight, and humanity had won.